And the story continues. The Fall of Troy, Part 2. Troy made headlines on the 24th of April 1184 BC when it burnt down to the ground. Now, the war between the Greeks and the Trojans went on for 10 long years. Both armies were tired, but both refused to give up. Both the armies were equally strong. In the end, Troy was taken not by force, but by a trick. Cunning Odysseus thought of a plan. He said, "Let's build a big wooden horse and let some of our great fighters hide in it. Then we'll burn our tents and pretend to sail away. But we'll return at night when the Trojans are asleep and we'll attack the city, burn and kill." The Greek leaders decided to follow Odysseus' advice. A skillful engineer made this huge wooden horse. Great heroes like King Menelaus and Odysseus himself entered it. The last man to enter was the architect himself, who knew the secret of opening and shutting the entrance. That evening, the Greeks burned their tents and sailed away. But they didn't go far. Now, the next morning, the Trojans got up ready to fight. But they were so delighted to see that the siege was over, tents burnt, and all the Greek ships gone. They opened their gates wide and saw this huge horse on the sands. They gathered around it as it was a really wonderful piece of art. As they were wondering how the horse came there, they saw a Greek lying under the horse with his hands tied. When they threatened him, he pretended to tremble or be afraid, and he told them this lie. He said that the Greeks were fed up of war and had sailed back home. But since they were afraid of the long voyage or the trip back home, they made this horse, this huge horse, as an offering to the god of the sea. Now, the Trojans asked the Greek why they made such a huge horse. To that, the captured Greek replied that if they had made it smaller, the Trojans might have taken it inside their city, and the luck which was meant to be for the Greeks would go to the Trojans. The Trojans were very happy to hear this. They said to one another, "The Greeks are gone, walls are not needed. Let's break the walls and take this huge horse and the luck that it is going to give us into our city." Their wise priest warned them not to do it. He realized that this was a trick to defeat Troy. But the Trojans were so excited that they didn't pay any attention to their priest. They broke their protective walls and took or dragged the horse into their city. After that, all day they feasted, they partied, they drank, they celebrated, and at night, when they were tired, they went and had a very sound sleep. This was what the Greeks were waiting for. They had not sailed far, but as soon as they were hidden by an island, they lowered their sails and anchored. When it was dark, their fleet of ships, led by Agamemnon, sailed back to Troy. The Greek they had left behind, tied up, was waiting for a signal, and as soon as he got the signal from them, the side of the horse opened and out climbed the Greeks who were hiding in, and they opened the gates of Troy. The entire Greek army entered and just began to burn everything in sight and killed everyone. Troy was filled with the sight of leaping flames, sounds of yelling, crying, shouting, weeping, and the noise of weapons. The sleeping Trojans jumped out of their beds quickly, but alas, it was too late. Too late to put on their armor and try to fight. But in spite of being taken by surprise, they fought back. They fought back very courageously and valiantly, but it was all in vain, and Troy was burnt completely. Old King Priam of Troy was killed with all his sons. Hector's wife, his old mother, and sister were carried off as slaves by the Greeks. King Menelaus rushed through the city and he found his wife. When he found her, she had a head hung down in shame and in sorrow. She couldn't even speak. But Menelaus forgave her and took her back with him, as he now knew that it was goddess Aphrodite who had caused her to run away from him and her child. When this horrible night was over, there was nothing left of the rich, strong, prosperous city of Troy. That comes to the end of the story. Some synonyms and antonyms. Synonyms meanings, and antonyms are opposites. Skillful, showing great knowledge and aptitude. Architect, a person who designs buildings. Here it means a person who constructed the house. Deserted means empty of people, no people there at all. Threatened means to indicate harm. Voyage is a long journey by sea or sometimes in space. Disaster means causing harm, damage or death. Anchor is a heavy metal used to moor a ship, that is to keep a ship in place. This is an anchor. Conqueror, a person who defeats another and takes over their property. Choked with emotion, strong feeling which makes it difficult to talk. Crept, move slowly to avoid being noticed. All in vain, without success, that means of no use. Now antonyms are made in two ways, where we write directly the opposite, or like this one, decided and undecided, we use prefixes. So the opposite of, or the antonym of cunning is honest, victory defeat, persuade dissuade, entrance exit, commanded served, sorrow joy, proud and humble. And then there are the ones which we make antonyms by using prefixes, like decided and undecided. Un is the prefix. Pleased, dis is the prefix here to get displeased, and necessary, un is the prefix to get unnecessary. We will now begin the English workshop. Question 1. Find and write the Greek and Trojan names used in the story, both part 1 and part 2. Make a list of separately the Greek names and separately the Trojan names. Question 2. List all words related to war from both parts of the story. Now, this is called a word register, and you have words like army, weapons, armor, everything related to war. Make a list of it. Now the third one. You have to note the following constructions carefully and then use them to express your idea. Now the sentence given to you is a horse big enough to hold men inside it. So you need to understand something is big enough. Okay, so I made my own sentence here. My house was big enough to have my cousins over for the vacations. Similarly, you can write your own with something big enough to. The second one, the Greeks were tired of the long war. My sentence, I am tired of being at home since the month of March. Now, C, D and E to be done in a similar manner by you. Put the following events in order in which they took place, number them accordingly. Now, if you look at all these, the whole thing started with the cunning plan of Odysseus. So you write down here number 1. Secondly, the second one after Odysseus' plan is the Greeks built a big wooden horse. The third one is the great heroes hid in the horse. Then we have the Greeks burned their tents and sailed away. And so in the same manner, you go ahead reading the lesson and how the events take place. That manner you will number them right up to number 12. Next question, identify one example of a main clause and one example of a dependent clause from page 46. Okay. Now, many of the Trojans were killed before they could put on their army. This is one of the sentences from page 46. And the main clause here, many of the Trojans were killed. When were they killed? Before they could put on their armor, and that is the dependent clause. Another sentence from which you can pick out the main clause and the dependent clause. It was only Aphrodite who had turned her heart away from her home. This one you do by yourself. Now, question number 7, be a writer. Read the beginning and end of a sci-fi story given below and complete the story using your imagination. The title is already given here, The Magic Glasses. They have given you the beginning of the story and the end of the story. So you have to use your imagination and write something in between. They've given you a little idea of what they want over here. After 10 years of diligent experimenting, diligent means very serious and hard-working experiments on light, Jayanth, a brilliant scientist, created a pair of eyeglasses which would enable him to see through all opaque objects. Opaque means not transparent, like doors, walls, metal structures, etc. I know you would love to have a pair of glasses like that. So now use your imagination, okay, and continue to write after this. On Monday, he put on his magic glasses and stepped into the busy street outside. Now this is as far as my imagination took me. You can continue in this manner or you can write your own. The entire street looked different. He walked up to a shop which had its shutters closed. Amazing! I can see the stuff in this shop. There were toys of different types, and you can continue or you can write your own. But it has to end with, and so Jayanth received the State Award for Brave Citizens. Okay. Let us go to the next. Read the following and observe the use of tenses. When an event which has occurred in the past is narrated in the present tense to create a dramatic effect, its tense is called the dramatic present tense. Now, generally, when we are telling a story or narrating something that has already happened, we use the past tense. But sometimes we use the dramatic present tense to tell a story. Like this one, the signal flashes green, vehicles start from the opposite direction, they move fast. Suddenly, a speeding motorcyclist tried to cut across, etc., etc. Now, I need you to relate this same paragraph in the past tense. And it will start something like this. The signal flashed green. Vehicles started from the opposite direction. They moved fast. Suddenly, a speeding motorcyclist tried to cut across from the wrong side. He was about to collide with a loaded truck. He applied the brakes. He fell and slid out with his bike from under the truck. He came out unscathed on the other side. So you will complete not Jayanth's sci-fi story, but this passage in the simple past tense. Thank you.